This doesn't sound catchy, but it's the truth. To progress in Highline Freestyle, you have to learn to sit down from bouncing and standing, and to stand up with bounce. And once you know how to do it, you have to practice it until it becomes second nature. I'm Rebecca, and I really have a talent for discovering all of the pitfalls while learning tricks. I like to share what I learned along the way to make it hopefully easier for you. In this video, I want to show you how to do a Korean bounce, a soup bounce, and a sit bounce. All of them start in standing, consist of sitting down in the first bounce and standing up in the second bounce. The difference between them is the leg position while you're sitting, which is either Korean, soup, or sit. You can do a Korean bounce in two variations, either in a sit mount style or Chongo mount style. For the rest of the video, I'm going to focus on the sit mount style, as this is the one that I'm doing myself. We're going to start by looking at the standing up, as this is a bit easier when you're still shaky bouncing and standing. Then look at how to sit down from standing, and at the end how to put both together. Let's start with the standing up. To stand up, sit to feet is the easiest because you have both feet already on the line and you just have to stand up at the top of the bounce. Korean to feet is the hardest because you have to put both feet on the line in addition to standing up in the same bounce. So I recommend to start with sit to feet. Before you start with that one, I recommend that you're comfortable with a static sit mount on a rodeo line and a high line. To do it with bounce, collect bounce in Korean, then you put both feet on the line as you would do for a normal sit mount, and then at the very top of the bounce, you lean forward and push both feet down, and then you should be standing, and then you just have to make sure that you don't fall off to one side. You want to do this at the very top of the bounce as you're weightless there, and that gives you the room to push the line down without a lot of effort. Once you can do the sit to feet, you can make it a little bit harder by trying a soup to feet. For that one, you just put the back foot on the line and the other one is still next to the line, and then on the way up, you have to put the second foot and stand up in the same bounce. And when you're also good with that one, you can move on to the Korean to feet. I found that for this one you need a little more bounce, so maybe try it now, and if it doesn't work out, come back to it later when you are comfortable bouncing and standing and sitting down. But basically you just have both feet next to the line, you need quite some bounce, you put both feet on the line and stand up in the same bounce. Let's look at the second part, the sitting down now. For this one, it's the opposite as for standing up. So to sit down in Korean is the easiest because your center of gravity is lower and you can use both legs to balance. And to sit down and sit is the hardest because in addition to your center of gravity being higher, you have both feet fixed on the line, so you can only use your hands to balance. I recommend again to start with the easiest version, so here to sit down in Korean. It's the inverse motion of standing up. While the line is going up, start bringing the line to your butt, take the front foot off the line, use the back foot to guide the line all the way. You want to sit on the topmost point, and then take the back foot off once you're on the way down. Because it can be hard to sit down precisely in Korean, it can help to grab the line with your hands, and it also just makes it nicer to sit in Korean. If you're hesitant to sit down in Korean from standing, because it's really far away and you can't really see what you're doing, you can try the following. Instead of sitting down from standing, which is quite a long way, you bounce in sitting and then you stand up, but not all the way, just a tiny bit, and then you sit down in the same bounce. And then you can work your way up to stand up a tiny bit more each bounce and then sit down again in the same bounce. And you can do that until he can stand up and sit down far enough that he can also try it from standing. Notice that I recommend to try this one with the soup bounce, as I find it the easiest when you have to go up and down. But back to sitting down in Korean. There's another common way to do it, which is to take both feet off at the same time and let the line snap up. This works because Korean is an easy landing position, but I would have found it way scarier. It's less precise and therefore makes it harder to stand up in the next bounce, and you may also lose bounce in the process. So I recommend to go for the more controlled version, but you can of course decide for yourself. Once you know how to sit down in Korean, you can make it a bit harder and go to sitting down in soup, which is basically exactly the same. You just don't take the second foot off on the way down in the bounce. And when you're comfortable with that one, you can move on to sitting down in sit, but just be aware that this one is a lot harder than sitting down in soup, and that it's also a less versatile skill because you basically only need it for the sit bounce. To do it, you basically do the same as to sit down in Korean or sit down in soup. You just leave the feet on. Now we've looked both at sitting down and standing up, which means we can put both together. Here I recommend to start with the soup bounce, followed by the Korean bounce, followed by the sit bounce. At the beginning, you might wait 1 or 2 bounces in between if everything happens quite fast, and then work your way up until you don't need any bounces in between and you just sit down in one bounce and stand up in the next bounce. And once you know how to do them well, you can start to play around with them. So you can, for example, try to do as many in a row as possible, or you can add variations. For example, you can cross your arms, you can go for a yoga pose, or you can try to straighten your leg in a sit bounce. But here there are no limits to your imagination. I hope you have fun trying them, and see you next time.